Everyone has a different view on life and death. One area with major opinion difference is the topic of abortion. Abortion deals with termination at the beginning of a life, but have you ever turned the spectrum and thought about the methods used to terminate life after birth? Two main methods considered are suicide and murder. Somewhere between these two methods lays the practice of euthanasia. First, I will introduce you to the term euthanasia. According to Wikipedia, euthanasia refers to the practice of intentionally ending a life in order to relieve pain and suffering. Euthanasia can be classified into three different types. First, voluntary euthanasia is conducted with the consent of a patient. Active voluntary is legal in Belgium, Luxembourg, and Netherlands. Passive voluntary euthanasia is legal throughout the U.S. In this case, the patient brings up death, assisted by the physician, and the term assisted suicide is used. Non-voluntary euthanasia is conducted when the consent of the patient is unavailable. In this case, children, babies, and people who cannot respond properly or voice their opinion. This type is illegal worldwide. Third, involuntary euthanasia is conducted against the will of the patient. In this case, someone capable of responding refuses the practice but is still carried out. These three types can be divided into passive or active. Passive euthanasia is the withholding of common treatments, antibiotics, and medicines necessary for continuing life. An example of this would be a cancer patient who refuses chemotherapy or other attempts for cure. Active euthanasia entails the use of lethal substances or forces such as injections or killing. This is the most controversial type, and it is argued whether or not it is murder. An example of this would be a patient with a terminal illness or great pain that wants to choose their own fate and have a painless death assisted by a physician. Now that I've briefly defined euthanasia and explained the different types, I will move on with the history of euthanasia. Euthanasia goes back as far as the ancient Greeks and Romans in the 5th century before Christ. Before Christianity, the people were very tolerant of euthanasia. Many didn't see the value of individual life, and physicians were frequently performing abortions and both voluntary and involuntary mercy killings. After the Greeks and Romans, people began to oppose euthanasia and assisted suicide. The Great Awakening introduced more religion and reduced the tolerance for suicide and euthanasia. In 1828, a law in New York rejected any practice of mercy killings. This was the first U.S. state to outlaw assisted suicide. Controversy over the subject continued throughout time, and in 1870, Samuel Williams began using morphine and drugs to intentionally end lives of the patients with terminal illnesses. Many physicians still held the view that pain medication should not be used in a lethal way. Most of the United States rejected euthanasia, but few states accepted it as the right to the choice of death. One popular doctor who performed many mercy killings was Jack Kevorkian. In 1990, Dr. Kevorkian participated in his first assisted suicide involving a woman named Janet Adkins. In 1998, he was a guest on the television show 60 Minutes, where he showed a video of himself administering an injection to Thomas Uke, who was suffering from Lou Gehrig's disease. In 1999, Dr. Kevorkian was convicted of the murder of Thomas Uke, and he was sentenced to prison for 10 to 25 years. In 2007, he was released on parole after serving his first 8 years. Next, I'm going to turn the focus more on euthanasia in America. According to West Encyclopedia of American Law, in America, a mercy killing or euthanasia is considered to be a criminal homicide. In this case, homicide is defined as any intervention taken with the intentions of ending a life. The only two types of homicide that are not punished are justifiable and excusable homicide. 3 states in America have legalized physician-assisted suicide, which is not classified as euthanasia and is somehow either justifiable or excusable. First, in January 17, 2006, Oregon's Death with Dignity Act was passed, making it the first U.S. state to legalize assisted suicide. On November 4, 2008, Washington passed their Death with Dignity Act, making it the second state. And not long after, on December 5, 2008, Montana passed their Assisted Suicide Act. Lastly, I will introduce the various methods used in the practice of euthanasia. According to euthanasia.com, there are many methods used by physicians to end the lives of their patients. In Oregon, a doctor can write a prescription for drugs that are intended to kill someone. The patient takes the pills in a single dose and dies. However, studies have shown that there's a 16% failure rate attempting suicide using the method of prescription drugs. Another way is by the use of injections. In the Netherlands, the patient is given an injection to put them into a coma, followed by another injection of potassium chloride that sends the patient into cardiac arrest. In some cases, food and fluids are restricted from the patient, causing them to die from dehydration. This method is often slow and involves unwanted suffering. There is a self-deliverance method developed by Dr. Philip Nitschke. He first developed the CO Genie, which was an apparatus that turned out carbon monoxide that could be made at home. Next, he invented the peanut pill, which is a barbiturate-based pill used to painlessly end the life of a patient. There are workshops held to teach people how to manufacture these two methods by themselves at their home. Most of the methods are painless, a few require some suffering, but the controversy still continues whether or not euthanasia is acceptable. After a brief definition of euthanasia, some history, some information on euthanasia in America, and an introduction to the methods used in this practice, I hope you have a better understanding of what euthanasia is and how it causes controversy. Similar to abortion, euthanasia is a topic that will be impossible to agree on. There is much religious and moral influence on the support or discouragement of both euthanasia and abortion. Euthanasia can be viewed as an intolerable murder or an acceptable way to end the life of someone who has great pain and suffrage. We all have different opinions, and after being informed, you can now take your side on this controversial subject.